You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hey mamas, and welcome back to another episode of the Mama Work It podcast. I'm super excited to be chatting today with Kate Reuter. Kate is a marketing strategist turned transformational coach for moms and the host of the Passion Minded Mom podcast. She helps moms who are done feeling depleted and sick of playing small reignite with where they lost themselves in motherhood and develop the confidence to embrace a bold new start. Kate herself has overcome so much as a woman and is living proof that a new start is possible for any of us who are struggling with what life may have thrown our way. But I know she'll tell it way better than I can. Kate, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, as I mentioned, you do have an incredible story and have overcome grief, illness, change, so many things. Can you share with us your story and how it sparked your new start from marketing strategist to now transformational coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is primarily in marketing, both in and out of corporate. So, whether I was working as a consultant or for a company in a marketing department, I have always loved marketing. But when I became a single mom following divorce, I was faced with a choice of how I wanted to shift my career. And at that time, I decided that I wanted to reboot my practice as a coach and consultant. And I decided from there to dive into marketing, but now I have transitioned into transformational coaching. And primarily that decision came out of what I experienced and the adversity that I encountered when I was becoming a mom. So during my first pregnancy, I was diagnosed with cancer. And then about a year after my second daughter was born, I was going through a divorce. And that journey had lots of lows and some highs, but it was quite challenging an experience. And I pulled myself out of the trenches, and that partially is what inspired me to begin working with other moms to help them face obstacles of their own.
God, that is such an incredible story. And I mean, I can't imagine being diagnosed with cancer while pregnant, what fear and anxiety and series of so many emotions that likely went through your head at that time. How did you manage everything?
Well, it was certainly not what I expected it was going to happen, as I was about 19 weeks pregnant and really excited for the pregnancy. So when I was diagnosed, it was a little bit of a whirlwind. Things happened really fast, and I think because of that, I was not able to fully process what was going on. So I did go to Moffitt Cancer Center for treatment, but then almost immediately following that, I had turned my focus to having my first daughter, and I wanted to do a hypnobirth. So that took a lot of practice to get ready for. And so I just really kind of dove into that work and really didn't process, what had just happened until much later. And then, as I mentioned, after, the first couple of years of becoming a mom and just having a newborn and then getting pregnant with my second pregnancy, which was very difficult, was extremely hard on me. And I was not the best version of myself. And it was a really tough time. So I didn't handle it very well. And then going through the divorce and becoming a single mom after that, it was incredibly hard. And it took me a really long time to figure out how to navigate all of that and then get to a point where I realized that everything I had just gone through was something that could help other people, not to mention potentially save lives. So I was diagnosed with a cancer of the largest organ, that's our skin. It was melanoma, but while it's life threatening, it is one of the most preventable cancers. So once I emerged from this period of not taking care of myself and complete overwhelm and not managing my time well, and I was full of self pity and doubt and really not coping very well, I realized that sharing my story was going to potentially help other people. And like I said, potentially save lives. And so that was enough for me to shift into this new career path as an entrepreneur where I could help others in a much more significant way than I ever realized.
Yeah. I mean, your vulnerability is just incredible. And I imagine it hasn't always been easy to talk about your cancer survival or your divorce or all of these, dark moments that you were facing. So, is it exactly that? Is it just the light of being able to help people, other people, why you choose to kind of work through that and share these painful experiences with other women?
No, I think that came after. I had to grab a hold and take control of my own situation, my own life, my own emotions before I could even really think about putting myself in a position where I was a resource to help other people. So, there were some really dark moments and I didn't cope very well. So, um, I was exhausted. I put a lot of things on my own plate and there was a little bit of a vicious cycle between ambition and perfectionism and then not taking care of myself that was completely depleting to me personally. And a lot of my mornings was filled with dread of how I was going to get through the day. So it honestly felt like survival. And I had to grab a hold of that. So, one of the first things that I did was I took control and I started understanding that I hadn't been very good at managing my emotions for a very long time. I think a lot of us don't realize how we're not taught to fully process our emotions. So, I realized that resisting my emotions and covering them up and trying to fill them with being busy was not serving me. And so one of the first things I did was grab a hold of that and start to begin processing my emotions fully, the good and the bad, and taking better care of myself in those moments when it was challenging and making sure that I was making healthier decisions so that I was more equipped to deal with the challenges. So that was really the first place that I started. And from there, things started to get a lot easier. The hard didn't seem so hard. And I was able to integrate a lot more joy and positive feelings into my life because I understood that there was this full spectrum of emotion that we get to feel, and all of it is okay. Incorporating the tools to manage my emotions more fully helped me feel all of them more productively. And it just opened me up to better time management, more love for my children, more patience with them and myself, and a lot more self love. And those were the keys to really turning things around for me.
I love that you said that because it's not really about suppressing or not feeling the sadness, the grief, the depression, right? Like we all feel that. Even the happiest people out there feel that sometimes, but it's processing. And what exactly does that mean for someone listening who's like, what do I do to process that stuff?
Yeah, so that's a great question because the the process for me started with those, like, the tiny little habits on a daily basis, the things that I wanted to change and shift, the things that weren't working well. So the first thing I had to do was create awareness of what wasn't working. And then I had to commit to changing it. I had to make that powerful decision for myself, for my future self. So the next step of that was to plan, and you'll appreciate this
Yes.
because of your expertise and your book. I had to plan in advance, not only the tasks that needed to get done and the care for the kids and all the things for my business, but how I wanted to take care of myself and what that looked like in terms of daily habits and planning them in advance instead of letting my toddler brain, the impulsive part, take over in the moment. So once I created that plan, then when I got to that moment where I didn't want to follow through with it because it felt hard, that was the toddler brain taking over. That's when I had to actually manage the emotions. I had to manage the uncomfortable feelings that came up when I was used to maybe defaulting or, numbing or having wine or wanting to escape or distracting myself. I had to actually just sit with the feelings and process them. And that is really where the powerful work came into play. That shifted in so many things in other areas too.
Yeah, I imagine it just skyrocketed your productivity, your self awareness, your ability to move toward your goals and achievement, right? I mean, all of these things, these doors, I imagine, opened up when you took those steps. Is that true?
Well, I wish it was that instantaneous because it certainly didn't feel that way. I mean, now looking back, I'm so grateful that I took control in those moments and took responsibility for my own situation, and then was resourceful in finding the tools and then committing to myself daily. But it was a journey and it takes practice, like anything does. So it was, a lot of feeling really badly, but having compassion for myself that this was part of being human. And you mentioned, right, going through the grief and feelings like shame, these are not feelings that we want to sit down and feel. But when we realize that they are just feelings, right? And that we have the capacity to handle them, it really does start to shift you to a place where you can, like I said, experience the full spectrum of emotions and just name them. But also from that place, we're able to like minimize the control that they have over us and give it helps us develop resilience. And that is really what over time was like flexing the resilience muscle little by little with all this practice that eventually started to put me in a place where I truly felt like I can handle anything. And to me, that is the epitome of resilience. When you feel like no matter what you are dealt, that you can handle it, that you'll find a way. And yeah, it was a journey that took some time, but it is the source of creation and creativity. And what I help other moms do is tap into that because it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. Oh, so many truth bombs here, Kate. I love it. The resilience muscle. I'm such a fan of that myself. And I feel like a lot of moms, just talking about, let's say, the pandemic, for example, experienced maybe at the beginning a real low there. And I can speak from experience, I did too. But then once you do start to exercise that resilience muscle, I mean, you do get that feeling like anything that comes my way, I'm going to handle. So it's kind of like these hard experiences, these really challenging times in life, as low as you feel, and sometimes you got to get lower like you said, right, to really
Mhm.
process those feelings. Those are what have you coming out so much stronger, so fully equipped, so kind of, if you're thinking of that muscle analogy, ripped to handle anything that life is going to throw your way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just having grace for yourself in the moments where it's not easy because we're human beings and life is not always going to be easy and streamlined and smooth and peaceful and calm. I still have my moments, but now when I have those moments, my awareness is so much greater that I can just recognize, okay, this is what's happening right now. I don't need to beat myself up because of it. I don't need to sit in it. I don't need to dwell on it. I just need to feel it And then oftentimes that's what actually helps, like I said, take its power away. And when you process that, then you process through it. And yeah, I think just having that grace in those moments that this is where I'm at and this is okay right now is incredibly powerful work.
Yeah, agree. So you now focus a lot on healthy habits and mindset. What are some tips you'd give moms listening so they can too start to transform their health and mindset starting today?
Absolutely. So, recognizing what's not working, creating awareness around that, and taking ownership of our power to shift and change. If we're stuck in blame or believing that we're the victim of everything that's happening around us, it's going to be much harder to make those changes. So, understand what's not working, creating that awareness, and then taking ownership of it by pre-planning, right? What you want to happen. So, a lot of times it's a conversation with your future self. What does she want you to do in this scenario? There's a quote by Jim Rohn that says, "Discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons." And I think that really rings true here. So, pre planning in advance and then managing your emotions when your toddler brain doesn't want to follow through on what your future self has planned for you.
Yeah. Yeah, you know me, I'm a big planner. Yeah, how do you actually execute this daily in your life? Do you utilize, like, what systems do you utilize? What specific actions do you take?
Yeah, I'd say with anything new that I want to implement or shift, it does start with really intentional writing it down, putting in the calendar, putting things like yoga or exercise or movement in my calendar first. So, planning the things that I need to take care of myself because my health and wellness is incredibly important to me. And I think some of that comes from my experience with cancer and just realizing how our body is a vessel and we've only got one and it's vulnerable. So let's take good care of it. So I do prioritize that. And in the beginning, I have to put it in the calendar and be very intentional about it. And then over time, practicing that, it becomes part of my routine. It just becomes part of something that, is part of what I do. So things that I've put in the calendar and now are part of my daily practice are things like journaling, but even more specifically, writing down gratitude, what I'm grateful for, and not just, one list that feels obligatory, but really diving deep into it. So I like to do it at the end of the day. I actually write it down as well. And I just go. I just write anything that's coming to me as long as I'm really feeling gratitude for it. I like to express it, write it, but with the feeling in my body of it. And so that's been really helpful for me, as well as I mentioned movement, exercise, yoga. At least 4 times a week is something that I prioritize. And just overall, healthy eating, that's now just part of my routine, and making sure that I am taking care of my nervous system and not maxing it out. So that means not too much caffeine, very little sugar, and a much better relationship with alcohol if it's even present at all. So, those are things that really help me manage my nervous system and create a very different experience and a different feeling in my body on a daily basis.
Yeah, those are amazing and incredible tips. And they're so simple, and I think a lot of people hear it often and think, well, what's writing it down going to do? It makes a huge difference to write that down. It holds you more accountable, right? It really makes it feel real when it's on paper, when it's in your phone, on your calendar app, when the reminder goes off. All those things make a huge difference. So, write it down, ladies. It makes you do it. It really holds you more accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can, I would love to just add one more thing too about for moms, especially the benefit of this work and managing our emotions. And like I said, naming them is that it has helped my daughters who are 5 and 7 manage theirs as well, because I'm setting the example for them. They are watching and they have seen my improvement over time. They have watched me on my journey. They've watched me go from having little patience and reacting to things, have a lot of frustration, to breathing through those moments now, being much more calm. If I need to, I'll sometimes say, Mama's getting frustrated. I'm going to take a minute to calm down. And they respond to that. So their behavior has gotten better. My relationship with them is so much better now than it was before. And so that has just been a secondary benefit that is priceless.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that because I know for me personally, that was a game changer. When I flipped the script and I thought about how I was managing my time for me and prioritizing my health and wellness, as you said, as the ultimate parenting necessity that needed to happen for my kids to learn that skill set. If you're not doing it as a parent, why would your kids grow up an adult in the same way, right? I mean, you are basically modeling the behavior you want your children to do as adults one day. So if you are loathing and self pity, if you are never prioritizing yourself, if you aren't making time to exercise or eating healthy or whatever, whatever it is that is most important to you and that you value, then why would your kids grow up and do the same? So when you really look at it from that way, as like, no, this is the way you're parenting. You're modeling this so that you're raising really healthy and competent and independent and wonderful people. It kind of makes you feel guilty about not doing it, I think.
Yes. And, things are a lot different nowadays in my life. The vibe, the tone, and the energy in the home is a lot happier. It's more calm. It's more peaceful. And yes, there's just so much more love. But I didn't realize that I was the one getting in my own way for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really common amongst moms. So thank you so much for saying that. So you know me, and I'm all about kind of time and prioritization and productivity. So what is your non-negotiable when it comes to managing your time in your world?
Putting the time in to take care of myself first and prioritizing that. So I need to know, right, what my minimum is, my minimum requirement. Like I said, 3 to 4 days a week, there has to be some type of exercise, just activity, movement, even if it's a walk. So I need to put that in first. I make time for that first. And then anything else that falls under just taking care of mom, make sure that I put in the calendar first. And then the daily gratitude for sure is something that's now just part of my habit. I do wake up prior to the kids getting up. So the time does vary, but it's always before they're awake. And so that is my time to to have peaceful alone time where I can either journal or I can look at the goals that I'm setting or do a meditation, something where I can just be still and tap into my intuition. It's really just my sacred time. So I make time for that in the mornings as well. And beyond that, I would just say, like, the other things that I've put into practice now is a healthy diet because that makes me feel my best, quality time with the kids so that I'm not trying to balance work in the moments where I'm also with them. So I have to practice a lot of constraint and discipline there just to make sure that one isn't bleeding into the other. So I'd say there are a lot of non-negotiables, but being a mom, we have to make room for flexibility too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a mom listening and this sounds overwhelming because you're not doing any of it, start with one. Just start with one thing. And I'll tell you this, I used to be a total snoozer. Like on my alarm, I'd hit snooze over and over and over again. But I did start waking up before my kids a while back, and that is a non-negotiable for me. I wake up before them every day. I'm the same as you. I take that time for myself. I usually like to exercise during that time and get my workout in because it is a big priority to me. And that changes my whole day. That waking up before the kids and having that time to myself. So even just try that one thing, and do that and see how that affects you.
Yeah, one thing I'll add about that, because that was one of the first things that I shifted that made a huge difference, was that I created some awareness around the fact that the hour or two that I would spend in the morning before they woke up, once I put that into practice, was a lot more productive for me and better for me than the hour or two that I thought I needed to spend, decompressing at the end of the day after they were in bed. The way that I used that hour was very different when I shifted it to the morning versus when it was in the evening. So that was a big shift for me.
Yeah, yeah, because everyone has different times of day when they are more productive. And that's great that you discovered that. And I think for a lot of people, even if they don't necessarily think they're a morning person, it might also just be because they haven't tried it. At least give it a try. And what's the worst that could happen? You do it for a month and you're like, this isn't really for me. And then you stop, right?
Right. It's all trial and error.
Yes, totally. Okay, well, this has been such a fun chat. Before we wrap up, I would love to ask you some random, just for fun type questions so our listeners can get to know you on a more personal level. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, Kate, what is your go to get shit done song?
Oh gosh. It changes, but I'll give you a genre.
Okay,
It's usually something pop or like hip hop.
yes.
Yeah.
A lot of moms love hip hop for sure.
Yeah, if it's got a good beat and I can dance to it, it's also something that gets me moving.
Yeah. Would you say that you're an introvert or an extrovert?
I am an introvert. I recharge for sure alone versus in crowds.
All right. So, nail salon, hair salon, or spa, you can only pick one place to visit for the rest of your life. Which one is it?
Anywhere I can get a pedicure.
All right. And if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Calories don't count.
Dark chocolate.
Ooh, that's a great choice. Yes. All right. Well, before we end our chat today, can you please tell our listeners where they can find you after the show?
Absolutely. So my website is katereuter.com. That's KATEREUTER.com. And there I also have a mom pressure quiz that's free that you can take. And I also have the Passion Minded Mom podcast, as well as a Facebook group for passion minded moms.
Amazing. All right, Kate. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was such a great chat.
Thank you so much, Marissa. I really appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.